Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are starting a new series on my channel where I talk about my favorite finishes of nail polishes, and we're starting with one of my absolute favorites, which are shimmers. I love this finish so much, as you probably know, because I always share so many of them, especially in my seasonal favorites style videos. And I was a little hesitant, honestly, to even do this new series, or at least this shimmer video, because I feel like I've just shared so many of them already, and so I didn't want it to be repetitive or anything, but I figured it would be a good place to just have all of my shimmers, or the majority of them, in one video. As you can see, this is a massive video. It's the biggest one that I've done to date, and I don't even have all of them in this video. So this is just gonna be the part one, and I will have a part two probably in a couple of months. I decided to kind of split it between part one being the more lighter, spring, summery kind of shimmers, and then part two will cover maybe some leftovers that I couldn't fit in this video. But it'll mainly be the fall and winter kind of shimmers that I love to wear. So yeah, I have a ton of swatches for you, a lot of brands that you have seen before, but a few that I probably haven't shared on my channel. As always, I will have timestamps in the description box if you do want to see what brands I'm featuring or what polishes are there. And yeah, let me just get into my favorites. We're starting with a couple of Mooncat shimmers, and this first one is Ghost of Hecate. This one came out a couple of months ago in the Goddess Complex collection, and it was easily one of my favorites. This has just the most ethereal, ghostly look to it. On one coat, it is super sheer, but the blue shimmer is just so vibrant. It's just insane to me. I definitely think this is one of those shades that looks so good no matter if you do 1, 2, or 3 coats like you see here. I did end up cutting out the application of the third coat just because it was getting a little long. The next shimmer I have is Pixie Stick, which came out in the Lost in a Folktale collection, also from a couple of months ago. This one is a little bit more opaque than Ghost of Hecate, so I feel like you get more coverage on each coat. I really love wearing this in one coat. I feel like even though you could still see my nail line, it just has such a beautiful wash of color that really reminds me of cellophane. I love it so much. So again, I'm building it up in 2, and I'll also be showing it in 3 coats just to show what that looks like. This one is just so stunning. I love the primary green shift that you see in the shimmer, but it does shift to a beautiful aqua too. Next, I chose High Fructose, and this one is a really pretty, almost like a baby pink, but leans a little bit lavender, kind of shimmery base with a really beautiful gold to green shift. I think this one is just so magical. This one definitely is sheer, but it has so many of those little shimmer particles that it does cover up the nail line a good amount. So this is another one that I love wearing on one coat for like a very dainty, almost fairy kind of vibe, but I feel like it could also pass for a mermaid feel. Really pretty. So since I never swatched this on my channel before, or at least not that I remember, I am showing the application for the third coat, and it just builds up to be basically fully opaque. I feel like you can't really see my nail line, maybe if it was in direct sunlight or something, but this just looks so good. This next one is more of a true pink though. This one is a Midsummer's Dream from last year's Once Upon a Fairy Tale collection. I absolutely adore this shade of pink because I feel like it's one of the true pink shades from Mooncat. I feel like a lot of the pinks that they release are usually very purple leaning, almost like that lavender kind of color like High Fructose, but they're still really pretty. So this one is definitely another very ethereal kind of shade with that really intense blue shimmer. I feel like it's pretty similar to Ghost of Hecate in that way, but obviously this is a pink base, and it's also more of a slightly pearly kind of crelly base color, so you can almost see some brush strokes, but I still think it's an absolutely beautiful color. It reminds me of fairy wings and I love it so, so much. The next shimmer I have is Curse of Calypso, and this one was definitely my top favorite from the Goddess Complex collection. It's a really beautiful periwinkle kind of base color with a stunning gold to green shift. This is another one that I think kind of gives me cellophane vibes, but as you can see, it's definitely very sheer on the first coat. You barely get a wash of that purple, but I think it does build up really nicely. It's still definitely very sheer to the point where you can see your nail line after 3 coats. So I know that can be such a deal breaker to some people, like they just do not like seeing visible nail line, and I totally get it, but I feel like a lot of shimmers are just usually more on the sheer side, but I do have a couple that are a little bit more opaque. This one is not one of them though, but I think it's still so beautiful. I just love that greenish glow. Another purple shimmer that I love is Into the Wishing Well, and this one came out in last year's Once Upon a Fairy Tale collection. This one I would call more of a medium blue-violet kind of crelly base with a larger shimmer particle that shifts from gold to peach, and I think maybe even green in like a more extreme angle. So this one I think is in a more opaque kind of crelly base, so it does build up to be a little bit more opaque. I think for 100% full opacity, maybe you would need 3 coats depending on your nail length and application. I'm only showing 2 coats and I feel like it's pretty opaque for me here, so I would recommend this one if you are looking for a little bit more full coverage. And I just really love the base color of this one. I think it's so pretty and it just complements that gorgeous peachy shimmer. The next one I have is Flight of the Monarchs, which came out in the Lost in a Folktale collection. This one is such an intense gold to orangey copper shimmer in a slightly purple tinted base. I was honestly so surprised when I had first swatched this one because I was just expecting it to be a very full coverage, almost metallic kind of shade, but this just gives such a beautiful wash of color with such an intense glow. I love this so much. As you probably know, I've shared it a couple of times already on my channel because I think it's just so stunning. I especially love this coppery orange shimmer with a purple base. It just gives me sunset vibes. I love it so much. The next shimmer I have is Sabortooth from the Pretty Prehistoric collection. This one is this icy blue shimmer in a really soft, almost cloudy cornflower kind of base color. I think it is just so pretty. I would call this definitely more of like a spring kind of shade for me. I really am not wearing it this time of year, but I think it's just so magical. I feel like it just reminds me of Cinderella or Alice in Wonderland. It's just so pretty. I think this one is a little bit sheer though and looks best in 3 coats when it's a little bit more opaque. It also dries down to a matte finish, which is nice because I feel like it gives a plush, almost velvet kind of look to it, but I definitely prefer it with a glossy top coat like you see here because it just makes those shimmers glisten. It is so adorable. A blue shimmer that I think is seasonally appropriate is Mermaid Bait. This one is kind of like the sister polish of High Fructose. They were released as a duo and have a very similar formula when it comes to a almost crelly base with a larger shimmer particle in it. This one is just so stunning, so shifty. On the first coat, it almost looks like green, so it might not be the most flattering depending on what your preference is, but as you can see in the polish and on the bottle, it definitely has more of a blue primary color to the base. But once I move the polish away, you can see on the right side of my nail, there's a beautiful green glow. I think this one is just so magical. Total mermaid vibes for sure. And this one just builds up so beautifully in 3 coats. I feel like the green glow almost gives it a sea glass kind of look. It's just so shifty, and this one was inspired by this now discontinued shade called Ocean Lies, which is very similar. I think Mermaid Bait is supposed to be Ocean Lies 2.0. The main difference between them is that Ocean Lies is definitely much more green heavy. It's more of that seafoam kind of teal base, and it has a little bit more of an orange to gold shift instead of a pinkish shift in Mermaid Bait. So I absolutely love this one, and this is yet again another plea to please bring back the shade Mooncat. I am begging. It is just so beautiful. I definitely regret not getting a backup bottle of this one because it just builds up to be this magical seafoamy base color that just perfectly complements that beautiful golden glow. Oh my gosh, I think it's just so pretty, especially once it's built up on 3 coats to build up that color even more. It is so beautiful. Now moving on to some of my Cirques, the first one I have is Moonbeam, and this one is a really pretty ivory kind of crully base that has a strong yellow golden shimmer, and there's also that delicate holographic glitter in here. This shimmer formula from Cirque is, I think, one of their best formulas that they do. It is just such a beautiful finish. Admittedly, I don't love this on just 1 coat alone because I feel like the yellow gold shimmer is so strong that it kind of blends in or emphasizes some of my staining, which I don't think is flattering. So I would probably wear this over a sheer milky white or pink base, probably white, just to have an easier time building up that creamy ivory base color in this one. But either way, I think this one is just so beautiful. I love that golden glow. It is just so magical to me. Next up, we have one of my absolute staples in my collection. Like, this is easily in my top 5 if I had to be so bold to narrow it down, because I'm not good at doing that. This one is Hygge, and it is just the dreamiest periwinkle cornflower kind of blue base with a really stunning, beautiful, contrasting peachy shimmer, and again, that little delicate holographic sparkle. I just love how pretty this shade is. I think it's another one that is so whimsical, beautiful for spring, but also one of my Libra favorites. If you watched my very first video of my zodiac series that I've been doing, it just gives me the coziest vibes, and I feel like the color combination also fits for summertime because it reminds me of the sun setting over water, like beautiful golden hour glow. This is just such a magical shade to me. But for a slightly brighter blue for the summertime, I have Anchors Away, and this one is just so breathtaking to me. I remember first seeing this on Walker from Ave Pahlish back when she was doing her YouTube videos. She wore this in one of her intros, and I was just so distracted. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this shade? I need it immediately. I was just absolutely entranced by this polish. It is just so magical. I'm obsessed with this really vibrant greenish aqua kind of glow that the shimmer has, and I think it's such a beautiful contrast to this almost softer cornflower kind of base. I feel like this is the shade that I would wear if I was going on a vacation to a beautiful island and going scuba diving. It's just so mesmerizing. And for a slightly darker summer blue, we have Wipe Out, which just came out a couple of months ago in the Surfer's Crush collection. And I also shared it in my recent summer favorites video. This is just such a beautiful, glistening kind of shimmer. I feel like the shimmers in this one are a little bit different compared to the last few that I shared, where it has a slightly larger shimmer particle in it, and it just gives it it that really pretty twinkling kind of aurora effect to it. It's just so magical to me. As you can probably tell, I'm just such a sucker for any bright aqua shimmer, and in combination with a beautiful cornflower blue base. The next shimmer I have is Crying Contest, and this is from the recent MXM Tune collab. So this one is a periwinkle purple base color with a really pretty golden shimmer and that same micro holographic scattered glitter. This one I think is just such a dainty, soft shade. I love the name and the song that it's inspired by, but more than anything, it really is the color combination. It just gets to me. It's just so soft and whimsical. This is like such an ideal fairy kind of shade that I would love to wear in the springtime. I feel like on 3 coats, it also builds up to be nearly opaque too, so it's not as sheer as some of the more jelly formulas. Another recent favorite of mine is Ohana, and this one also came out in the Surfer's Crush collection, which means it's also on sale right now. So I just adore this one because it is such a beautiful lilac purple crelly base color with a strong aqua sky blue kind of shimmer. I am a sucker for this color combination, as you will see soon enough with some of my other picks. But yeah, this one is just so pretty. I feel like it reminds me of mermaids or seashells. It is so beautiful. I also have to feature Porcelain Plum as one of my favorites. This was also from the MXM Tune collection, and I just couldn't not include this one because I especially love the song and album that this one is inspired by, but I really do love the color as well. It's like a really pretty orchid kind of pinky purple base color with a really pretty pink shimmer that also kind of shifts to peach in extreme angles. I think there's just something so flattering about this color, and it also kind of gives me sugar plum fairy vibes. I can't talk about my favorite shimmers from Cirque without including Say Chic. This one came out in last year's Cosmic Discotheque collection, and it was just one of my absolute favorite polishes that released the entire year. It is a hot pink jelly base with that slightly larger, almost aurora glitter kind of shimmer, and that same holographic micro glitter as well. This one is obviously a lot more sheer because it's in that jelly base, so it's not gonna reach full opacity or really anything near that, even if you do 3 coats, unless you have some kind of visible nail line blurring base coat or something. But yeah, here on 3 coats, the base color does build up, but it still has that very squishy jelly-like look to it, and I just love that blue shimmer. Another absolute must-have is Cirque's Fandango. This one is just such a stunning peachy orange base color with, again, that same golden glowy shimmer that we saw in Moonbeam. I just love this color combination. It really just reminds me of peaches, which I think are so yummy. They're like my second favorite fruit after mangoes, and it just gives me such summertime vibes. I think that golden shimmer just reminds me of the sun or like golden hour, and especially with that peachy base, it's just so flattering to me. I am not sure how, but I just forgot to include this shade when I was swatching my favorite oranges a couple of months ago. So please let this be like an amended thing that this shade is one of my favorite oranges. So I only have 2 ILNP shimmers in my collection, but they are still obviously worth mentioning. The first one is Pixie Party from the somewhat recent Fairy Forest collection that came out earlier in the springtime. This one is a beautiful candy pink base color that has a slightly larger shimmer particle that shifts from that gorgeous glowy green to aqua. You can already see the pattern of what color combinations I'm just drawn to like a moth to a flame. This is easily one of my favorite shades in just my entire collection, mainly because of that beautiful pink base, but that shimmer also just has a really wet and almost opalescent glow to it. And from the same collection, we have Fairy Dust. This one is a light purple jelly base with a really vibrant copper orange shimmer and a slightly flaky shaped holographic sparkle as well. So this is another purple and orange copper combo that I am just a sucker for, especially for this time of year, because I don't know, there's something about this that just reminds me of a beautiful glowing summer sunset. So I am just really feeling this purple and orange combo right now. I feel like this kind of reminds me of Polish for Days Electra, which recently came out. I'm honestly debating on getting it, even though, like I just said, this one sort of reminds me of that. I am just itching for those shades. So next up I have a couple of Pahlishes, and I don't think you can find any of these anymore, especially the first two that are from Polish Pickup. This first one is the most recent. It's from I think last month or the month before, but it's called I Want to Hold Your Ham, and it is this really pretty light pink with that same kind of green to aqua shifting shimmer. So it is pretty close in theory to Pixie Party from ILNP. I feel like this one is a little bit lighter with a more intense shimmer though. Like there's also these slightly larger shimmer particles as well as these silver irregular flakies or something. So it just kind of gives it an overall icy kind of feel. And it just took my breath away when I first applied it. This next one is also from Polish Pickup, and it's actually back in time for the July rewind. I'm really hoping it's still available by the time that you watch this video in case you wanted to grab it. But this one is Send Nudis, and it came out last year. It's a really pretty, almost cornflower sky blue crelly base with a really strong reddish orange kind of shimmer that also shifts to gold in extreme angles. This is another favorite because it just reminds me of the sun setting over the water. Next up, I have a somewhat recent addition. This is Lavender Mint, and this is a really pretty lavender purple base with a strong minty green shimmer. So I was just on autopilot and completely forgot to record the first coat, but I am obsessed with how this looks on one coat because it just gives such a beautiful even wash of color. Obviously still very sheer, so you are gonna see some nail line, but I think the shimmer is just so glowy that it just distracts from any visible nail line in my opinion. So yeah, I did decide to just build it up in a second coat, and it just is so stunning with that contrast. And the last ethereal purple shimmer that I have is Song of Storms. This one is definitely an older polish, I think from maybe 3 or 4 years ago by now. But this one is pretty similar to the last one. I would say maybe the base color is just a little bit darker, but the shimmer goes from a bright aqua to a more intense blue, violet kind of color in extreme angles. So it has a little bit more of a duochrome kind of effect. I absolutely love how shifty this is on its own, but it also is really cool layered over a darker cream colored base. Like I remember I would love layering this over a dark blue or a dark purple in the fall time especially. It just makes it so multi-dimensional. Next for Olive polish, the first one that I have is Calla Lily, and it is this really soft, almost minty green crelly base with a really strong gold shimmer. This one is just so beautiful and dainty for the springtime. I feel like it reminds me of Tinkerbell or Tiana, just something so soft and whimsical about the shade that I just adore so much. As you probably noticed, I don't have that many shimmering greens, but this pastel one is the only one I need. And of course, I have to also include Lisa, which is the hot pink shimmer. This one came out in last year's summer nostalgia collection, and it was easily my favorite polish that all of Ave has released so far. It is just such an intense, juicy hot pink with such a beautiful formula. It's nearly opaque on the first coat alone, but it does build up to be fully opaque in about 2 coats. I think you just see a tiny amount of nail line, but it's not enough for me to do 3. So even though this one is more full coverage, it still has such a beautiful, vibrant shimmer that I adore for the summertime. Next, I have a couple of different dimension polishes. This first one is Peachy Keen, and it is this peachy orange base with a gold shimmer. So I think I actually shared this one in my summer favorites last year, and I said that it reminded me of the color that you would wear when you're on a resort vacation, having unlimited drinks by the pool. That's just the vibe that I get from this polish. I'm honestly not sure if mine has faded in color a little bit because I feel like it looks a little bit more orange than I remember it being, but it is a really pretty orangey coral color. And the other shimmer that I have is Thanks a Melon, which is this really juicy hot pink with blue shimmer. This one is definitely very similar to Lisa from Olive Ave, which is pretty good if you can't find this one anymore because I've had this for a couple of years now. The only or main difference between them is that this one has more of a jelly finish. So as you can see on the first coat, I didn't really get even coverage on it, but it's still a really yummy, juicy hot pink. So I personally love jellies in the summertime, and this one is just so beautiful. I love that squishy feel that it has. Now moving on to OPI, this first one that I have is Exercise Your Brights from the Power of Hue collection last summer, which I feel like not many people liked as a collection. Totally fair because some of the formulas were just complete misses, but obviously as a certified pink lover, this was the standout for me. It is just such a beautiful and very bright hot pink, where I feel like it's a lot brighter than the other two that I shared that are a little bit deeper or more red leaning. So I just really enjoy this one. This definitely has a little bit of a crelly finish, and the shimmer is more silver than blue, but still obsessed. The other standout from the same collection is Feel Blue-tiful, which I actually had shared as one of my summer favorites last year. And this one is just such a stunning, almost cerulean blue crelly base that has these really pretty gold shimmer particles. I feel like there's also these gold micro flaky in there as well. So I was debating not even including this one, but I kind of would consider it more of a shimmer than a flaky polish. So we're here. But yeah, this one is just such a stunning color. I love the gold shimmer. It just, obviously anything gold is gonna make me swoon. I feel like especially with this combination, it just looks like the sun sparkling over the waves. I am obsessed. And the last OPI that I have is quite the throwback. This is Jinx from the James Bond collection from 2013. How crazy is that? That's 10 years ago. But yeah, this one is one of the liquid sand polishes, so it actually dries down to a textured finish, but I still would consider this a shimmer because the gold shimmer in this is just one of my first loves. I honestly think this was the polish that made me fall in love with gold shimmer in the first place. Next, I have my one and only Bee's Knees lacquer. This one is called Better Than No Heart at All, and I'm pretty sure it was from a polish pickup a couple of months ago. This one has that really icy, kind of ghostly base color where you can barely even see the color on the first coat. You really just see the shimmer, and it definitely has that cellophane kind of look, which as you know, I am just such a sucker for. So yeah, this is definitely one of the more sheer ones that I have. Like when I'm moving my thumb in certain angles and the shimmer disappears, it just kind of looks like I'm not wearing anything. So it's really cool and super shifty. So here it is on 3 coats. It's definitely still very, very sheer. Like I know some people just do not like the look of it because it looks like you're wearing only 1 coat or something, but the shimmer is just so intense. And I also love how icy it looks in more extreme angles. This one is just so glowy. This next shade is Wildflower Lacquer's Still I Rise, which was a charity polish that supported the Black Lives Matter movement back in 2020. This one is such a vibrant aqua blue base that is super full coverage, so I got really even coverage on the first coat alone, and you can barely make out my nail line, so this one was like fully opaque for me in 2 coats usually. And the shimmer is just so stunning in this one. I feel like I just am such a sucker for these gold shimmers in a blue base because they just remind me of summer at the beach. It's just so pretty. Going back to recent releases though, this next one is Morgan Taylor's Tell Me About It from the Splash of Color collection. This one is just such a beautiful purpley pink, almost orchid kind of color, and like I mentioned in that initial review, I'm normally not a fan of these pinky purple kind of shades. I just prefer my pinks to be pink and my purples to be purples, but there is something about this one that I just adore, and I think it's the shimmer. It just reminds me of shells. And the last shimmer that I have for now is Red Eyed Lacquer's Fight for Our Life, which was a charity polish released last year to support Planned Parenthood. So this one is more of a periwinkle blue leaning base color that is obviously very sheer. It's very much on the jelly side, but it still has such an intense shimmer that is primarily that yellow gold, but it does shift to peach and then also to green and aqua in more extreme angles, which I'll be showing in a minute. It is just such a beautiful, shifty polish. I think it obviously looks so amazing on its own, even though it is still super sheer. This one can also be worn as a topper, I'm sure, to create that really ethereal, shifty effect. But yeah, here it is with that extreme angle of lighting, and I am just obsessed with how it glows. Now moving on to the collages, here is the first one, which is the gold shimmers that also kind of include the orangey, peachy ones as well. I just love how warm these are. Then moving on to the greens, I don't have that many surprisingly, but they still are so beautiful. I know technically Mermaid Bait is a blue, but it just fit in more with the green. And here are the blues. Definitely have a preference for that really bright aqua blue kind of shade, but I'm also a fan of the softer blue shimmers. I think they're just so dainty. And now the purples, I definitely have the most of. There's something about them that just feels so whimsical, like it reminds me of fairies, and I just love it so much. The bottom 2 though, I actually did repeat in the pink collage because I feel like those shades are just very borderline pink or purple depending on the day. So yeah, it's just so fun seeing these collages and just seeing the kinds of shades that I'm drawn to. I definitely would say that I have a type. So that wraps up part 1 of my favorite shimmer polishes. I'm so excited to hear what you think about my favorites. Again, I'm sorry if some of them, especially the first half portion, was repetitive because we have seen so many of these polishes swatched on my channel before, but they're just so stunning. I couldn't not include them. Like, I just couldn't be selective and do a top 10 or even a top 20, which is what my seasonal favorites is. Like, I usually just do the swatch wheel. I really wanted to just share as many of my favorite shimmers as I could, which ended up being a lot because I don't remember if I actually mentioned this in my nail polish collection video that I did last year, which, by the way, let me know if you'd want to see an updated version of that. But when it comes to my collection, at least before I started receiving PR, which is the full collections, I wouldn't pick up a full collection. I would just buy the polishes that I like. So in a way, all of the polishes that I had were my favorites because otherwise I wouldn't buy them. So I feel like I ended up picking so many shimmers out, and I was like, is this excessive? You know, like how is it possible to have so many favorites? But I'm a Libra and I can't choose. So yeah, hopefully you don't mind that I couldn't narrow it down to a much more nicer, like top 10 favorites, or, you know, a swatch wheel of my favorites. This is a part 1 of a part 2. I don't think part 2 is going to be as long as this one because, again, I tend to wear shimmers in these like warmer, brighter kind of months. But yeah, I can't wait to hear what you all think of my favorites. Obviously, you have to tell me what your favorite shimmers are because I'm gonna need to add them to my wish list and look for them on Mercari, but not pay the insane prices that they might be listed at. That's like something that I hate so much because there are just some beautiful indie polishes out there that I wish were more available, but because they're from smaller indie brands, they can only make like small batches. So it sucks, and I'm sorry if there's like some that I shared that you feel that way now where you would love to get them, but they're just not available. But if you do have any dupes for some of them, especially like the polishes, any polish pickup equivalents or whatever, please share them down below so everybody can get something similar at least to what I shared. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me and sticking through this super long video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.